r/NoSleep. Posted by u/Dwovar. My hometown has rules. Rule 5. Zainab left as soon as she could. Her new glass eye liked the warmth she'd carried the last 2 years of our relationship. I don't know how long my heart hurt after that. I know I cried a lot in my room. Navia and Duke were very understanding. I left town a week later, hugging my step-parents tightly and promising to never come back. They understood. Navia cried a little and Duke told me he was proud, gave me his old eye patch the way families pass down special heirlooms. I laughed and he looked at me oddly before zoning out again. As soon as the 8:26 bell rang, I was out on the road again. I tried to make contact with Zainab again, but she avoided me and I really couldn't blame her. I wound up next to her in class my senior year, the first senior year, thanks to my stress from before she came home with me, and she apologized for her fleeing. She said it was too frightening when the mirror ripped her eye out and seeing me just reminded her of that moment. She loved me, still, but couldn't bear to see me every day. She gave me a light kiss on the cheek and switched classes before the next session. I stopped trying to see her after that, as much as it hurt. I swore, over and over again throughout my life, that I'd never break a rule. But I did. After a week of being home from graduation, I was faced with Rule 5, which is probably the hardest to follow. Don't get me wrong, keeping your eyes closed for extended periods, not looking up or at birds, and breaking mirrors on a hunch is pretty frustrating, but they don't get as bad as Rule 5. Rule 5 hurts. I got up one morning in the middle of summer to head out to my shift at Winderson Seed and Feed. I had taken over my dad's first position from a long time ago managing deliveries. I pulled on my jeans and boots and a University of Tennessee t-shirt. The WS&F hat my dad had left behind years ago was still there, hanging on my bedroom wall. I grabbed it, tired of letting it be the past, and went into work. The WF&S store is just on the edge of town, but people congregate there buying and selling, so it's got a big parking lot to accommodate not just numbers but also tractors and 18-wheelers. I parked near the back and made my way in the employee door when Old Maid Winderson intercepted me. "Hey kid," she snapped. I usually don't let people call me kid, but she's Old Maid Winderson. "Yes'm?" I replied, not looking her in the eye. "I need a delivery received at the old farm. I'll pay you time and a quarter to manage it." "The old farm, ma'am? I don't really," I started. "I'm not asking, kid. Don't let me down. Grab 2 of the dropouts and take them with you. You can take the rest of the day off when you're done." She smiled, what I think she meant to be a generous one, but it didn't sit right on her. "Okay ma'am. Is it alright if I take Jeb and Marcus?" "Leave Jeb, his mom is coming by for feed this afternoon and she buys more if he's visible. Take the Donahue boy." "Okay ma'am. What time is the delivery?" 8:26 sharp. Her impatience was beginning to show. 8:26 ma'am? But what about Rule 1? You can leave out at 7:45 if you're worried, but you need to be ready by 8:26. "Yes ma'am." I think my voice broke a little bit and she gave me a stern look before heading off to find more work to do. I think as long as there's work to be done, Old Maid Winderson will be alive. I've never heard of her taking a day off or getting sick. She's always managing something or someone. I let Marcus Smith and Lionel Donahue know what we were doing. Neither of them was enthusiastic. Neither of them were willing to confront Old Maid Winderson either though, so we resigned ourselves to fate. I finished receiving couple bushels of hay around 7:30 and went to find the boys. It turns out Lionel had begged off home with a fever, which I figured was a load of shit. Pissed at him abandoning us and there not being another dropout available, as Old Maid Winderson called them, I took Marcus and resigned myself to manual labor. We were cruising by 750 and breaking every speed limit we passed. Neither of us wanted to do this and neither of us wanted to be at the old farm eyes shut for 15 minutes. Marcus spent the ride asking me about college girls, what they were like, were they really more liberal than high school girls? Liberal was his code word for slutty, I think. I was glad to reach the old farm and end the conversation as only the most salacious factoids would satisfy his curiosity. The old farm was just as run down as it had been when the conservationists had come out. The nests were still there and both Marcus and I avoided looking at them religiously. "Where's this delivery coming from?" he asked me. "I don't honestly know. Old Maid Winderson ever sent someone out to receive her before?" "Nope, not that I know of at least. I've only been working since fall though." "Does she ever do anything else weird?" I glanced at his face and saw the discomfort. "Nah," was his one-syllable reply, but it looked like a lunge. "Come on man, don't lie to me. We are alone at the old farm and both trying hard as hell not to break Rule 3, I dunno. Sometimes she has meetings with Mayor Vickers. I think that's weird, but it's not like it's illegal or anything. This isn't illegal either, Marcus. Yeah. He said and stopped talking. The 8:09 bells were loud and clear, even out here. We sat down and shut our eyes out of habit. Neither of us said a word. Talking can be a little dangerous for Rule 1. If you say something surprising, the other person might just look out of reflex, and you know what that costs. In the silence I felt the cool wind moving my shirt and pricking up the hairs on my arm and neck. I heard the eagle chicks squawking for food and the beat of great wings. There were grasshoppers chirping everywhere, which felt off for early morning for some reason I wasn't sure about. Marcus broke the silence and I clenched my eyes shut against the reflex to look at him. This isn't right. Something's is very not right. Wait for the bell, Marcus. No fucking way, don't you feel it? This is going bad. I know, I feel it, but calm down and wait for the bell. No. My mom ignored that feeling and never came home. His voice raised in pitch, squeaking out of him. 1 minute it's hold on baby, something feels off, then it's all screaming about the cold. I heard him stand, feet unsteady with eyes closed. I felt him feeling around with his hands until one brushed my shoulder. You've got to forgive me, man, but I'm getting out of here. Wait for the bell, Marcus, wait for the bell and I'll give you a ride. But I already heard unsteady feet walking away. Tentative boots on grass and uneven steps. Marcus, just wait. I shouted, you're going to fall and break Rule 1. I wanted to open my eyes, I wanted to see where he was, but I swore I wouldn't. My father's empty eye socket glared at me through 13 years like he was right in front of me. I kept my eyes shut. Even when I heard the exclamation of surprise, even when I heard the impact of a body on wet grass and the grunt of lost breath. Even when the shout of surprise and ensuing screaming jangled my nerves to jitters. The 8:26 bells couldn't be late, could they? They couldn't be damaged or off? Did I miss them with all of Marcus's screaming and whimpering and complaints of the abject cold? The temptation to open my eyes had rarely been stronger. Zainab's surprised cry echoed through my memory and I squeezed my eyes tighter. Marcus was calling my name, screaming anew as I heard the flapping of great wings and raptor cries. Rule 3. I shouted, eyes still closed. I slowly pulled myself onto all fours, crawling in the direction of the screams. Marcus became so all-encompassing that he seemed to come from everywhere. I had to be close. I could see the conservationists, the cute IT guy Ramy or Ronald or something with an R, being casually taken apart. Swinging my arm out, back and forth, I felt for his body. He'd stopped screaming some seconds ago and I couldn't finesse his location out. I was sure the 8:26 bell should have rung already, but I didn't dare open my eyes. Finally, I felt the dampness of wet cloth and the rise and fall of ragged breathing. Marcus? I queried. No answer. Hey, snap out of it. I said, jostling him roughly. Why hadn't the bell rung? I heard a pained groan from a little to the right. I ran my hand lightly over the damn cloth until I found the scrubby growth of his soul patch. That annoying look he would always try to show off, like a dozen scraggly chin hairs counted as facial hair. Marcus, come on. His head flopped away from my hand. Then the bells rang, 8:26. My eyes snapped open to see him there. I reached around his head and tilted it back towards me. Both of his sockets were bare. One was surgically executed, arteries and nerves neatly severed, the other ragged and torn as though pecked at for many minutes. The growl of a truck engine shocked me and I nearly fell. Stay here, Marcus, we'll get the doc. He muttered something and I took it for acknowledgement. Racing back to the driveway I saw a short tractor trailer with no logo. Hey! I shouted, hey! Call the doc. My boy just broke rules 1 and 3. He needs the doc. 2 men looked at me, visibly confused. Here's the shipping list. One said, a rather thin trucker with tattoos on his face and a grizzly mustache. I said get the doc, Marcus is hurt. I shouted again, only 5 long strides away. He said here's the shipping list, the other said, taller than the other with the same build. His face was free of tattoos but adorned with a nasty burn scar. I don't give a shit about the list, get the doc. They looked at each other oddly, like they just didn't understand the concept. The shipping list, the shorter one, began again. The doc. I screamed, the doc. The fucking doctor. Go get the fucking doctor. Puzzled expressions and silence reigned. It was then I could see their eyes were shiny, not wet like normal but shiny like glass. The sun reflected off them too well, too solidly. I could make out its blazing star form and brilliance in reflection. Here's the shipping list. The other man said, staring straight ahead. What? "Who are you guys?" "The shipping list is right here," said the shorter one again. I took the list out of their hands, half exasperated, half furious. There were no words on it, just unintelligible scratches of ink. "Marcus forgotten." I went to the back of the trailer and jerked on the handle. A padlock rattled in response. "You guys going to unlock it?" I asked. They weren't out front of the truck anymore. I saw them in my peripheral. "Oh, I didn't know you followed me. Say, do you have a phone?" My hair was electric, standing on end. "I need to call someone." They looked at each other again. Nothing said. "We can unload the truck." "Phone," I grouched. "I need a phone." "You want us to unload?" the other said in response. I felt sick. Marcus was dying and these weirdos with two fake eyes weren't right. "Sure, let me check my car," I said, keeping my eyes on them as I backed up slowly. As if reflexive, one unlatched the trailer and the other slid the door up. Once I felt the truck's lift gate against my back, I moved by feel, sliding around without taking my eyes off the men. "Marcus," I called, "I haven't forgotten you, bud. I'll get you the doc." Reaching in, I got one hand on my cell phone and the other on my 12 gauge. Keeping the barrel down, I checked that it was loaded and called the doc. Astonished that I was at the barn, he ordered me to stay. I could hear him running on his ancient legs as we talked. I hung up and slid the phone in my left pocket. "The doc's on his way, Marcus. Just hold on, pal." I dropped a Ziploc of buckshot into my right pocket and slowly eased around the side of the truck again. Back in view of the trailer, I saw the cargo. People, blind in both eyes and some still seeping blood, were being gently helped out and directed towards the barn cellar. Transfixed, I watched as 7 people in total were shepherded down the storm-doored stairs to below. I heard from down there a soft murmur. I poked my head in, looking around, and saw dozens upon dozens of people standing silently transfixed on nothing. Not an eye among them. I staggered and tripped on my way back out, scrambling on the grass until I reached Marcus. "We have got to go," I said, approaching. But he wasn't there. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned around. "David," someone said. I turned around to answer my name in the glow of late morning. I was stunned. "Marcus?" He stood behind me, staring straight through my soul. "David," he said, "David." I stared hard into his empty sockets. Then I remembered Rule 5. "No, Marcus," I whimpered, "no, no, no." His voice was the same, but his inflection, his tone, his expressions were alien to the boy I knew. The tough high school dropout tempted by the money at Winterson's. "You're not him." He repeated my name again, agitated. I looked down at the shotgun and contemplated blowing off his head. Putting another round in his knee maybe, just to keep him from running me down. But I thought of every rule breaker I'd seen. Would it have saved them? I sighed and let the gun swing at my hip. "Okayed, Marcus, okay. Rule fucking 5. I pressed my own fingers against the underside of my left eyelid. Pushing past the unbearable agony I felt at this first insignificant step, I pressed and pressed until my pinky, slipped under the eyelid and behind my eye. I collapsed to my knees, crying great heaving sobs of pain and bitterness. I pried then, pinky straining, against the soft squish of my eyeball. I felt tension in places I didn't know I could feel. Nerves spring first touched by the outside world, shrieking in pain and fire. I thunked from my knees to my side as I pressed on, prying my living eyeball from its socket. Screaming too high and too frenzied for me to believe I could make it echoed around the field. A second finger slid into the socket. Air rushed into the sealed space, bringing new pain and new agonies. "You motherfucker!" I shrieked. Everything went black for a second, and I woke up just a little while later, eyes still behind the socket. "You fucking motherfucker!" I howled as the first minor nerve snapped. A domino effect, nerve after nerve breaking free as I pulled. The eye was free of my socket now, dangling in the fresh air. White-hot furious pain lodged itself in my skull, setting my head on fire. "I hate you, I hate this town, I hate the rules. I hate. The eye came free, artery spraying blood on the grass. Holding the precious orb forward, I offered it to Marcus. "Here's your fucking eye." Marcus bent down and took it. His sockets unflinching to my plight. With a smooth motion he popped it into his mouth and swallowed. He turned and walked into the barn cellar without another word. Slowly I could feel the presence of eyes. I looked around frantically, but my vision was wrecked. Overlapping views vied for my brain's focus, creating a mad chaos. I closed my remaining eye, staring out through God knows what. It was inky black, the kind of black that implied shadows which weren't there. All around I saw what were, for lack of a better word, Eyes. They fixated on me and I felt small and insignificant. They had no apparatus for expressing feeling, no eyebrow or face or eyelid to slant or tilt or close. And yet they expressed something all the same. Hunger. I could feel the word in my soul as sharply as it being announced over an intercom. Spite. The feeling reverberated in my bones, hunting down every nerve and setting it off wrong. Desperation. Gnawing at my gut and begging for release, I knew there was nothing the eyes were not capable of. I felt myself hoisted up in the air, a dozen hands holding me firmly. I opened the other eye again and disjointed images overlapped and churned. The eyeless were carrying me down. One hand still held white knuckle tight to the shotgun, the other grasping for a safe hold. I felt the eyes get closer, closing in around me. I closed my eye again and searched. There was my father's gentle green. Far away on the other side was Zainab's deep hazel. I was drawn to a set of 6 and could see the piercing gaze of Mariana the conservationist. Amongst the eyes were many. I assumed Freddy and Janasia's were there as well, though I didn't know them well enough to find them. There came a fourth sensation, something I hadn't felt from the eyes yet. Something I'd never heard anyone speak of. It was a feeling so utterly shocking that I nearly dropped the 12 gauge. Triumph. The eyes stared all around me in victory, in conquest, in mastery over all. I was a prize, a gift. They stared greedily at their trophy moving further into the cellar. I was being passed along like a demented crowd surfer towards someplace. Someplace I did not wish to go. I locked stares with my father's green comforting iris. Even the harshness of the eye's emotion did not dull the gentle feeling I felt there. I turned to Zainab's haze and counted the golden flecks within. The cruelty of this thing could not dull their beauty. There was an immense pressure, like a sinus headache all throughout my soul, something pushing, pulling, prying to get in just as I'd pried out my own blessed eye. A pinprick slipped into my mind and raced through me. I felt the eye's emotion so much more vividly, so much more clearly. I felt nuance that hadn't radiated. Gasping for air, I finally touched the stone of the cellar floor. I knew something wanted in, because it was already in, filling up the places I filled, pushing me out of the places that belonged to me. I no longer remembered. What did I not remember? There was a hole where memory should be. I felt myself start to drift, cut loose inside myself. My hand raised the shotgun barrel to my chin. This was mine, this was me, this I controlled. I felt confusion scramble my thoughts. What was I holding? How did it work? What was it for? Freedom. I said out loud, it's for freedom. The space between me and myself shivered at the thought. It wanted more. It wanted freedom more than anything. Squeeze, I said aloud, squeeze the first finger. A harsh glee thrummed through not me as it sought the satisfaction of freedom. My finger squeezed and I was finally free of the rules. Because of Rule 5 I didn't have to worry about rules anymore. Don't look into the eyes of the eyeless.